What's poppin', YouTube? Is your boy Loho Plays. We are back for PBO week 2 for the Kalos Division. Of course, if you are enjoying this content, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe for more of the PBO Season 3 content. We're going to hop right into it. Of course, we're going to be going over the battles, watching the battles together, and then we are going to have a review of the mistakes on both sides. Of course, for the players that might be watching this video, this is all meant to be positive criticism, so please do not take this personally at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and hop right into it because we got some games to get through. So first game was between Ottawa Donphans and Marble Falls Miniors. Marble Falls Miniors last week did have a forfeit, so this is the first time that they're coming to a weekly match. And I have also just said prior that their draft is very, very scary. As well as the Ottawa Donphans returning from last week. Both these players actually had a forfeit, I believe. So both of these players looking to make their debut. Ottawa Donphans, their team roster is shown in the top right. Marble Falls team roster is shown in the bottom right. And of course, you can see that Ottawa Donphans decided to bring Kingambit, Donphan, Arcanine, what's this thing called? Mimikyu, Vaporeon, Rotom Frost. While Marble Falls decided to bring Galarian, Slowking, Electros, Blastier, Ursaluna, Klefki, and Tornadus. So yeah, let's just go ahead straight into the battle, and then of course we will go with the overview. Of course, Electros leading into Donphan, starting off the game, getting up rocks, which is super good because there's no spinner on this side. Electros getting a lot of damage off Giga Drain, makes a switch into Arcanine. Actually, Marble Falls doing a good job predicting that, saying that they're definitely going to want to keep their Donphan line. Unfortunately, Arcanine missing a Will-O-Wisp, and then being taken down by 2 discharges. Electros is doing some heavy damage this game already. Switch out from Electros into Klefki as Rotom Frost unfortunately misses another Blizzard. But of course, that's very scary for Blizzard users. 70% accuracy, couldn't be me. But it's the only move that Rotom Frost can learn. Let's go back 2 turns. On the switch out of Rotom Frost, Klefki sets up some spikes, and then decides to switch out into Slowking Galarian, while Vaporeon gets a Wish Baton Pass into Donphan so it can get up to high HP. Slowking setting up like a future sight, but ultimately might not play a huge role, depending on if they get a good switch on Kingambit. Here, Donphan getting rid of the spikes, which could be potentially useful for the Vaporeon, I keep wanting to say Mimikry, Mimikyu, and Kingambit. Does appropriately switch in on the Giga Drain, and also does not get hit with the future sight, but a huge close combat coming from Electros actually outsped and killed the Kingambit in 1 shot. That's actually insane. We can definitely tell at this point that Ottawa's team is getting dwindled down a little bit. Trail Play is coming out for Mimikyu, so that speed boost is going to help it out in terms of dealing with Tornadus. Going for Sludge Bomb while Mimikyu decides to Tera Steel, which is actually a huge smart play by the Ottawa Donphans to going for that Tera type to get that immunity to essentially allow it to live more hits. I think beyond that point, Tornadus was not able to hit it. And then we see Mimikyu after spamming. I know I did not just click restart. Okay, that got me fucked up. Okay. Mimikyu spamming some play roughs, but unfortunately not doing enough damage to Electros. This Electros is probably expert built. No, it's leftovers. Why is that shit doing so much damage? That's insane. Rotom Frost coming back in, taking that Electros kill, switching out into Vaporeon as the Slowking comes up. Slowking getting out some toxic spikes. It's okay. Maybe for Donphan, maybe for Vaporeon later on. Vaporeon starting to spam Chilling Water, and now we see one of the potential mons coming out for some light screen reflect shenanigans. And then once you know that Glacier or Ursaluna comes in, it is potentially GG here, I'm not gonna lie. And here comes the Glacier after a Trick Room on Klefki as well. Setting up a Swords Dance, Rotom Frost, Volt switching out into Donphan is not gonna want to take this Icicle Crash very well. And indeed it is not, as well as Glacier getting up that Chilling Neigh, increasing its attack. And then Glacier terrestrializing into Electric to take out the Vaporeon. that's very useful. I said in the draft overview, one of the reasons why Glacier wants to be Tera Electric is because it has a hard time dealing with bulky waters, and that is exactly what we saw here. And then of course Rotom Frost, even though it is faster, still gets one shot to Glacier close combat, and that is a very clean 5-0 by Marble Falls Miniors. So of course, I am going to have timestamps for this video, so if you just want to watch the battles, that's totally okay. But we are about to go into the actual team review side of things. So I do want to start off with, I have notes for basically all the games, so I'm going to try to stay organized. Starting over from the very beginning. Early on, I think this game plan of going for rocks, and in terms of Ottawa Donphans perspective, if you set up rocks here, they are there to stay. You know what I'm saying? There's no rapid spinner and there's no defogger on the side, so I think off the rip, going for stealth rocks is a huge play, because ultimately you can chip down a lot of things, because you know, in singles there's going to be a lot of switching happening. Of course, you are going to be taking heavy damage from Giga Drain, from Electros. I feel like that's appropriate, and I feel like switching out is definitely also appropriate, because Donphan can be still useful for doing heavy damage earthquakes on Slowking, as well as Klefki, as long as it doesn't have Magnet Rise. Also, like, just in case something is setting up spikes or something like Klefki, it is very good rapid spinner, so it is appropriate to switch out there. I will say this turn 2 of missing this Will-O-Wisp is actually kind of important, because later on in the game, Kingambit does take a close combat potentially with this Will-O-Wisp. It might be able to take one, because Kingambit is super bulky, as well as this thing is running some speed EVs for Kingambit. Maybe it's just like slightly enough for something that's super uninvested, but if it's 252 HP Kingambit, I think after that Will-O-Wisp it definitely lives that close combat. But of course I don't know the Electros investment. I assume it might be EV to take down a Kingambit, maybe at 252 HP. I'm not exactly sure, but that Will-O-Wisp miss actually played a huge role, I think, potentially in this match. So another important thought that I got from turn 4 is that you can see that the Electros is outspeeding your Arcanine, meaning that whatever speed investment you're running for your Arcanine, when it was 0 speed, this Electros, you can tell, is now running speed, because it has to have more than 175 speed. So this thing is going to be very speedy. So later on in the game, if you have your Kingambit out, I know it's very hard. I think Electros having close combat is very like niche, and you really don't expect that to come. But at least you have to acknowledge that it might be faster than you, which could put a lot of damage on Kingambit, because it does get Drain Punch, which is a move that it pretty regularly throws on there to gain extra health. So let's keep going. I don't think I had really anything wrong with a couple of these plays. Blizzard Miss, also unfortunate, probably did like 18 to 20 something %, maybe even more, because this thing is defensive. Overall, I think all these plays are fine. Wish Baton Passing is also very effective. I think on Ottawa Donphans, that Wish Baton Pass to get Donphan back up to health is really powerful. Of course, it still has to deal with Electros. Potentially knocking off there could have been strong for taking down Electros too, because it does seem that like that leftovers is giving it a lot of health back throughout this match at least. But the Rapid Spin is also nice to get rid of the spikes here. Here, turn 10 for Marble Falls. You know that previously Donphan did not want to stay in, so you are going for like 50-50 of whether you want to spam Discharge or whether you want to go Giga Drain. But later in the match you do show U-turn, so I think another option that you could have done here, if you were worried about them switching out, is you could have U-turned and appropriately, if Kingambit came out, go into something to counter it. Although it's more likely you brought in just or straight up Ursaluna, or potentially Klefki's just set up Reflect to deal with this thing. But I feel like this is another option besides just spamming Giga Drain, or potentially having a misprediction into the Discharge. But ultimately this all worked out, so it's totally fine. Really good play on Ottawa Donphan's part of switching Kingambit in to take the Future Sight. I wasn't even counting the turns, but I was like, wow, that was a really good play to go immediately into this to take the Future Sight. I think also on Marble Falls side, you can see that they also kind of didn't acknowledge the future sight, because even then I think their Donphan isn't doing much damage to you, so I think you have a turn to discharge into the Donphan if you really wanted to. But yeah, so here turn 11 sacking, I mean it's not really a sack, but potentially taking a lot of damage, because I think you're more likely expecting Drain Punch rather than close combat. But effectively sacking the King Gambit here is really unfortunate. I completely understand not expecting that close combat to kill, but King Gambit is really needed for sweeping potential of doing high damage output to Glacier, even though it is super bulky, as well as having access to Swords Dance Sucker Punch, depending on if that is your set, can put in a lot of work here. Versus once this thing is dead, between Rotom Frost, it's not doing too much damage to Slowking, as well as Mimikyu, as we saw earlier, did not end up doing as much damage as we wanted to, but maybe potentially, I mean Trailblaze isn't bad because it allows you to outspeed Tornadus, which is probably the most problematic thing, but also having Swords Dance on this could be effective, or as well as Bulk Up could have been strong. But yeah, second King Gambit here is really tough because this is one of your main ways of dealing damage to this team, and this team is really bulky, especially with Klefki having screens. Moving forward, I don't think I have anything wrong with these turns from what I wrote down. Yeah, I felt like all this was fine. I really like the Tera Steel on the Sludge Bomb. I think that was really cool. Worked out really well for you because apparently the Tornadus didn't have anything to hit for. I just wish that maybe this turn, knowing that they were gonna go, that they have Regenerator and they're most likely not staying in because of how much your play rough did, if you had Swords Dancing there could be really effective. But it is okay because I think after Swords Dance you definitely pick up that KO. But I don't think that Swords Dance would have won you the game, but it still would have been nice to pick off Electros. Hitting the Blizzard there, I think Blizzard is like an okay move to spam. But again, like, yeah, Slowking is going to come out and can effectively take those hits. Here, I will say, I think for Marble Falls, the T-Spike is like okay. It's not bad for Vaporeon, but I think if you had either Chilly Reception to, like, if you know that they're going to switch out, then you can get switch initiative on the Vaporeon following, or just setting up a future sight for future turns could be really effective. But ultimately Toxic Spike is useful as well. And in terms of Ottawa Donphan spamming Chilling Water, it's like not the best play, but also like you don't have much other choices. And then I don't think I really have anything else here. Oh, one turn also, instead of Chilling Water here, I mean chilling I literally just like counteracted whatever I said earlier, but Chilling Water here is like okay because I understand you feel like you not sure what to do, but potentially Baton Passing here and a Donphan and threatening an EQ could be really powerful because their Tornadus is the only thing that is immune to the Earthquake. And you also have Rocks up, so it's going to take a 25% chip, meaning it's at like 36%. Depending on if you have Knockoff or Ice Spinner, you can do heavy damage to it, so you could potentially have an opportunity to spam Earthquake after that. But then Glacier is very bulky, as well as Ursaluna, as well as there are potential screens in the future. So it's definitely not sweeping the game, but it can do a lot of damage. So another option could have been to Baton Pass into your Donphan to have a little bit more offense. But overall, I think that's like all technically not like, I mean, I guess there were like a few misplays, but I think like overall, I think Electros's close combat was definitely shocking to see, to just straight up knock out the King Gambit. The Will-O-Wisp miss was a bit unfortunate, as well as like the one Blizzard miss. I think the Regenerator Mons as well as Electros was just really overpowering for this team, because between Giga Drain hitting Donphan and then just spamming Discharge while also being faster than most of your walls so it can U-turn out without taking a lot of damage, really made Electros very strong for this team matchup. I think that's pretty much it for the notes on this game. I think ultimately this was, I mean, I think everyone that is going to be up against Marble Falls is going to have a hard matchup, but of course you have to be careful of just some of these demons that are on this team, like last year in Ursaluna. Like Ursaluna did not come out this game, but you know, once Mimikyu is gone, just spamming normal type moves can be really powerful, and the 2 resists of Arcanine and King Gambit do not want to take an Earthquake. So yeah, that is going to be it for game 1, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Alright, next match we have the Pittsburgh Scizors with the team roster in the top right versus the Mojave Cacturnes with the team roster in the bottom right. The Pittsburgh Pittsburgh Scizors decided to bring Iron Tread, Sylveon, Slitherwing, Goodra, Salazzle, and Frostlass, while the Mojave Cacturnes decided to bring Cresselia, Dachsbun, Carbink, Magneton, Wishcash, and Fortress. So let's go ahead and watch this battle. Leading off, we got Wishcash against Slitherwing. Slitherwing immediately Tera into Bug, huge damage with the U-turn going into Goodra, as well as Wishcash setting up Stealth Rocks. Very useful for Salazzle and Frostlass. And then switching into Fortress to take a Sludge Bomb, and then following that up by going to Dachsbun to take the Flamethrower to activate the Wall-Baked Body. Goodra still continues to go for a Sludge Bomb, but Dachsbun is going to get off heavy damage with a Body Press. And then Dachsbun is going to Protect to try to get a little bit of Leftovers chip as well, before it decides to switch out into Wishcash again. Wishcash taking a little bit more from Sludge Bomb, but hopefully not bad, and then ultimately dying to Goodra's Dragon Pulse. Next is Carbink, and then a double out into Cresselia. Goodra taking a Sludge Bomb there. And then Goodra missing a Draco Meteor, while Cresselia decides to set up Trick Room, and then hits a decent Psyshock, and then another Draco Meteor miss from Goodra. Very, very unfortunate. Psyshock picking up the KO there, and then ultimately Iron Tread's coming out. Another Psyshock coming out from Cresselia, but not doing a lot of damage. Tread's getting off a huge knockoff to prevent any leftovers recovery. Now comes out Magneton as Iron Tread decides to go for a Rapid Spin. Here we see an excellent play of the Magneton going for Tera Ground and hitting a huge Tera Blast while Iron Treads knocks off. It does take away its Eviolite, which is still powerful, but hopefully I think that is a really good trade for Magneton. Excuse me, I'm going too slow. Frostlass decides to come out. Cress comes in on the Ice Beam. Sylveon then decides to come out as Cresselia decides to spam some Lunar Blessings for some health, as well as set up a Trick Room, and gets a nice Thunder Wave off on Sylveon as well. A couple Para Hacks here. I believe we get some more Lunar Blessings to try to revive up Cresselia's health, and then in comes Ferrothorn to take the Hyper Voice. And then here we have a huge Gyro Ball, actually doing like a good 48% to Salazzle. Then Dachsbun coming in, but a good prediction on the Pittsburgh Scizors, going for a Toxic. And then in comes in Frostlass as Dachsbun decides to get up a Wish. Next switches into Magneton to take the Shadow Ball, and unfortunately does get the crit, but the Wish does come true, so we get back up to a good amount of health. Then another double into Cress, taking a good 38% from that Shadow Ball. 2 more Shadow Balls will do it, but before then, Cress is going to get off a good Thunder Wave. Carbink coming out to take a Shadow Ball as well, and then Carbink starts to hit up Frostlass with an Earth Tower, but really no high damage there, while Shadow Ball is honestly doing a good chunk to pretty much everything here. 38% to a Dachsbun is not bad at all. Then we have Crest coming out. Lucky paralysis there for the Frostlass, but ultimately, even with the Lunar Blessing, that Shadow Ball is still going to be knocking out Cresselia. Next, Fortress comes out, another Shadow Ball. Crit just ends up killing it. I don't know if that crit mattered, but man, this Frostlass is picking up some kills this week. Another Shadow Ball into an Earth Power. Disables the Earth Power even. Frostlass is about to pick up like multiple kills this week. We do see that the Carbink was Iron Defense, but ultimately that's not useful here. It's just kind of showing off the set. And then of course Magneton is last, which can pick up this kill with a Flash Cannon. But then following that, Sylveon does get paralyzed. Is there hope here? Put another Paralyze, keep Magneton in the game. 44%, let's see. Oof, big Hyper Voice, 63%. Ultimately, at this range, Slitherwing can always, yeah, come in and go for a first impression and finish off this game. And that is going to be a GG's, a good 3-0 by Pittsburgh Scizors. So, of course, make sure you check for timestamps, yada yada. We're about to do the game review. Okay, let's get into it, because I have a lot of notes for this game, actually. So, starting off, just based on the overview, spinner here, also have options for rocks on both sides, and we do see that this side, the Mojave Cacturnes is bringing Trick Room. So leading off, I don't think like Stealth Rocks is always pretty decent here, because ultimately Wishcash can win a 1v1, I think, against Treads. I think this U-turn very powerful for Slitherwing. Goodra coming in here. I honestly think all these plays made by Mojave Cacturne was really effective way of getting Donphans in to do heavy damage with body press with the well-baked body. I think is just super sick. Even though it does take a lot from Sludge Bomb, you can always wish protect this back up later. But I will say in terms of, it's not this turn, but Sludge Bomb coming out from Goodra as well. Blah, 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 blah. Really nothing too much to be said here, but I will say here, I mean, ultimately it is at this point looking like you might need a sack for Goodra, but potentially you could go on a Sludge Bomb, go on Cresselia. If you're Spadef, it looks like you might be Spadef, to take that and do damage. I mean, ultimately you sacked your Wishcash to kind of like end up going Cresselia in the end. Let's see. So I wrote down turn 7 to bring in the Carbink, and then switch back out, and the Crest was kind of useless because ultimately you're taking this 18%. Realistically, it didn't end up mattering, but I felt like there's no real reason for Carbink to come in and then switch out. I think Cresselia there was always just better to come in earlier, as well as potentially maybe not sacking the Wishcash prior. You could maybe just go Crest earlier and keep your Wishcash alive. Even for a sack, it's not bad. Continuing forward, I was also mentioning, or I was in my notes, I was mentioning Calm Mind Cresselia also could have been pretty powerful here, although you do have to deal with Salazzle's Toxic. As well as you're not doing much damage to Iron Treads with a Psyshock. But Calm Mind could have been a pretty strong set here, as well as you have to deal with the Slitherwing first impression. But I mean, I'm just shooting stuff out of my ass. I just thought Calm Mind would have been good, at least for like this matchup, as well as Sylveon, potentially Frostless as well. Let's keep moving forward. Good 30% here, as well as Goodra going for another Draco Meteor. I think potentially the prior turn, sometimes Cresselia can run Ice Beam. I think for Pittsburgh Scizors, I honestly don't think Goodra is like a sack that you should be giving up immediately, because I believe you brought Wish Protect on Sylveon. I'm not 100% sure, but if you did, you could always keep this to wish back up later, as well as whenever you do sack this thing, you are opening up a lot of potential for Magneton to put in a lot of work later on, because Goodra is your main specially defensive wall. So when you do the sack here, you are opening up yourself a lot of damage from Magneton. Let's see, I think that's good here. I think turn 12, I think it was a really good decision to actually Psyshock first turn, so you don't get your knockoff on the Magneton immediately. As if you switch here, you will take off your knockoff. I'm not entirely sure if Magneton can live in Earthquake, even if it's Terra Ground, from an Iron Trends, because it lost its Eviolite. So I think actually Psyshocking here once was kind of a good play, because then you switch the following turn to catch the Rapid Spin, which is pretty powerful. This Terra Ground option also really important for getting this KO, because Treads could have been, I think Treads honestly could have been pretty powerful here between Donphans and Carbink. So I think this was a really smart decision to go for the Terra Ground and kill this thing here. Am I missing anything? Yeah, as I said before, with Treads gone, this really opens up Magneton, especially under Trick Room, to do a lot of damage. Of course, you're not like 2-hit KOing Sylveon, but you could still do a lot of damage with Flash Cannon and threaten it, as well as I think I talk about it later. Yeah, I do talk about it later. This switch is fine. Potentially, instead of Ice Beaming there, Shadow Ball could have been better in terms of Pittsburgh, but it's like, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. Trick Room being set up here. I think everything is fine here. I think the next turn that I have to talk about is 22. Ultimately, this is all fine. Kind of unfortunate on Pittsburgh parts that they do get double parried, because it does allow Cresselia to get back up to full. Then we do see Fortress come in, as well as I was going to say here, Gyro Ball actually does a ton of damage to this thing at 48%. It looks like it's almost a 2-hit KO, meaning also potentially another super strong threat in Trick Room for Mojave Cacturnes would be to actually have Fortress in Trick Room and spam Gyro Ball, because Sylveon's not going to want to take that Gyro Ball near his Frostlass, or it looks like Salazzle might not be able to take 2, as well as Slitherwing is decently fast, and you do resist the bug move, not the fighting move. But you can ultimately go for that as well, and this could be another powerful mon under Trick Room. I also want to say that the Toxic move here was super powerful. Definitely a strong way of either like they stay in, you can still Corrosion Toxic them, or you can pick up the Dachshund here. Dachshund going for a Wish. I think ultimately you could have Protect here and healed up your Dachshund, as well as, but I do think it's honestly not bad to try to get Magneton up to more health, because it's definitely valuable in this match. Let me start to erase some of these things. I don't want to get lost in my thought. Okay, let's keep going. I think the next time I talk about it is like turn 28. 262. Yeah. So interestingly, I think this double, I mean, you lived another one. Let's think about this. I mean, even if Salazzle takes a Flash Cannon, it's not bad. So I think honestly staying into Flash Cannon isn't terrible. But ultimately you did end up taking a Shadow Ball the following turn. I think your opponent was kind of just like willing to sack Frostlass here. Cresselia even taking 38%. I think even here, I think you definitely need to keep Trick Room up to stay in the game. Thunder Wave is not bad, but I think ultimately Trick Room could have been better. Oh, no, wait. Let's keep continuing this thought, because you didn't sack the Cresselia, which is honestly good, because it's a good sack for later. Carbink here, I think earlier you spam Earth Power, but ultimately, as I said, like literally a turn before, Trick Room is your way of winning this game, actually. And because Carbink can take multiple Shadow Balls, and potentially other hits from other mons, it's a really good Trick Room setter, and you showed it late game, but you actually never showed it earlier. But if Carbink sets up Trick Room, and then you can sack Cresselia and then go in Fortress to spam Gyro Ball, even if you don't kill everything, you at least whittle everything down low enough so Magneton can start picking up some kills, and then there might be a sack war between First Impression, but you also have a Carbink to resist that move, and there might be a sack war that goes on. So I do think effectively, instead of Earth Powering here, which does effectively no damage, I think Trick Room is more effective of getting your other mon's potential out. Even if you have Power Gem here, I've already checked the calcs, it does like max, like I think it was like 40%, or no, it was like barely to a KO, assuming you're no special attack. But yeah, effectively I think Trick Room would have been a lot better there. Here you decide to switch in the Dachshund. I think this is fine. This is fine because ultimately you're using this thing as a sack, and I think you definitely want Carbink around for the Slitherwing. But then here, I think this was not correct to go into Cresselia, because ultimately you're just sacking it here to die to Frostlass. But ultimately you could have gone Magneton here to just go for the Flash Cannon, and I do believe you outspeed. But even if you Lunar Blessing here, I think this is another potential turn that you should have Trick Roomed to open up more options for your Magneton and your Fortress. Because even after this Lunar Blessing, you still die to your Shadow Ball, which is definitely unfortunate. And then again, going into Fortress here is, I mean, even though it was a crit, it probably mattered. I think Magneton is just better because you can get off the Flash Cannon. I believe after Paralysis, you should outspeed and you should threaten things. And then I cannot believe I just clicked reset again. I hate myself. You can click Flash Cannon effectively against everything, but ultimately your Fortress got crit, which means that it ultimately got sacked for nothing, which is definitely like feels bad, man, like whenever you get crit there, for sure. Even here at the end, I think like Earth Power is fine because I think you want to delay how many turns you want to get off a Trick Room, but it looks like it was no, that was a high roll. I think you try to get off as much damage. I mean, none of this really matters because the Trick Room is not going to last long enough. But yeah, I think you may not have won the game with this whole Trick Room strategy, but you definitely could have. I mean, in terms of the moves, or the turns where I said like Trick Room on Carbink instead of like Earth Powering it, it may have not won you the game, but it definitely would have allowed you to put more offensive pressure on. But yeah, that's pretty much everything for the Cacturnes. I just think you did bring Trick Room, which I think was pretty powerful with your team of Fortress with Gyro Ball and Magneton Flash Cannon. But ultimately, I think you didn't invest as much. I guess you didn't really like invest much into using Trick Room. But I think it was actually powerful if you end up decided going for it. And then also for the Scizors, Carbinking does allow you to go into Sylveon to wish Baton Pass up some of your mons like Goodra if you did keep it, as well as spamming Frostlass, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam did end up working out for you at the end, but ultimately that did open up opportunities for your opponent to set up Trick Room. So that could have been scary, but ultimately like you do have First Impression Slithering in the back to come in on Cress once you know the set. To go for U-turn or First Impression, but I think Slitherwing could have came in more frequently on Cresselia, because I think by the end of the game, you know that it was Trick Room, Psyshock, Lunar Blessing, Thunder Wave. Realistically, you don't really care if you get Thunder Waved, because it doesn't, like, you can just go for First Impression, or you could just go for U-turn. And most time, like, if Sylveon is already paralyzed, they don't want to Thunder Wave it again, so that kind of gives you a free opportunity to go into Volcarona, or if you see that they're spamming Lunar Blessing, you can go into Slitherwing and put on a lot of pressure. So I think that's all for this game. Again, nothing personal here, just trying to give some positive criticism to the players, of course. But overall, this was a really good game. I was very entertained by this one. I just thought that Mojave Cacturnes actually had a lot of potential to come back here with Trick Room, but because I think it would, if the Trick Room plays, Trick Room actually came out, I think it actually made the game a lot tighter than expected. I think it probably would have gone down to like Sack Wars and Slitherwing honestly probably having to take some hits to keep the game alive. So, but yeah, that is game number 2 for week 2, and let's move on to the next one. All right, next game we have the Sonoran Pikachus against the Santa Cruz Swadloons, and I'm not gonna lie, this is a very hype match from this week. As you can see, the Sonoran Pikachus have the team in the top right, as the Santa Cruz Swadloons have the team in the bottom right. The Sonoran Pikachus decided to bring Samurai Hisui, Enamorous T, Electrode Hisui, Dunsparce, Tauros, Paldea Blaze, and Sableye. While Santa Cruz Swadloons decided to bring Meowscarada, Florges, Tatsugiri, Goldingo, Tinglu, and SWALOT. Obviously, SWALOT. Very interesting to come to this match. Very excited to see what it's going to do. Meowscarada as the lead. Catching the Samurai Hisui is very effective. But Tauros Paldea does come in and get off a good Intimidate, but the Toxic Spice can be very helpful here, and we do see a huge bulk up coming out from Tauros Paldea off the rip, getting a huge critical hit on the Raging Bull on the Florges as well. I wonder if that was defensive, because that took a shit ton of damage. As well as getting a Trailblaze to end, killing off the Florges. This thing is looking like a huge threat at this point. So following that, Ting Lu decides to come out. Taking a close combat does actually live it with 5%, and then Ting Lu going for a Whirlwind. Enamorous T comes out, Ting Lu getting a little bit of HP back. Enamorous actually going for a Calm Mind while Ting Lu sets up the Stealth Rocks. Draining Kiss to take out the Ting Lu as well. 4 Mons left on the Santa Cruz Swadloons. Enamorous T going for Tera Steel, a very good option against Goldingo, as well as doing a lot of damage with Earth Power, but Goldingo does show the red card. Sableye coming in now just gets absolutely obliterated by Hex. Electrode Hisui comes out to outspeed Goldingo for heavy damage. It does end up going for Volt Switch on the Meowscarada. Then we can see Tauros Paldea Blaze coming back in to deal some heavy damage. Ultimately, Meowscarada does decide to sack itself for some decent damage on Flower Trick, as well as it did have Choppleberry, interestingly enough, and did take a close combat. In comes in Tatsugiri. Tauros is very low HP, so Tatsugiri is able to go for a Rapid Spin here, and also takes a close combat from Tauros Paldea, so it is at 1.5 speed. And believe it or not, that 1.5 speed actually mattered to let it outspeed an Electrode Hisui. Oof, that's insane. Electrode actually goes down to poison. Samurai Hisui comes out, gets poisoned as well. SWALOT coming in. A huge taunt from Samurott to prevent the acid armor. This is obviously an acid armor body press set. Samurott going for a Swords Dance, and then SWALOT going for a body press does huge damage. Switches out, sacks the Goldingo to Samurott as it dies to poison. Next we have Enamorous T out on the SWALOT. SWALOT immediately going for acid armor, while Enamorous goes for iron defense, and then we can see the tech of Encore on SWALOT that actually outspeeds Enamorous, meaning that SWALOT can get up to another acid armor, so what is it, +4? And now it can just start spamming body press for some heavy damage. Ooh, SWALOT even going for the protect for extra poison chip just to make sure that it kills. Smart move, because it probably was EV Light with defensive. And then Enamorous coming in and taking another body press, and because it's steel, taking huge damage, and Santa Cruz taking this win for this week. It was extremely close. Of course, we are gonna have to go through the battle, so if you want to skip to the next one, feel free, but we are about to do the review of the battle. And I have a lot of notes here for both sides, so let's go ahead and go through this thing. I apologize also if like I'm talking in the screen. It's just like where all my notes are to keep me organized, and like trying to keep track with like all the games is very difficult, so to remember at least. So leading off, I think honestly this Meow lead was really effective, because if you led Ting Lu into this, obviously you can spam Ceaseless Edge as well as get off heavy Aqua Cutters. Ultimately, Tauros Paldea, this Toxic Spike, really smart decision, good prediction that Tauros is going to come out. I don't know if Florges was like your main answer to dealing with Tauros, but damn, it took a bajillion from Raging Bull. This also would have been a 2-hit KO. So, I mean, even if it wasn't a crit, you still would have died the following turn, but it wouldn't have allowed it to get up a Trailblaze boost. But ultimately in this situation, Trailblaze was needed. Also, I was thinking, even at +1, potentially, I would calc this for yourself, but potentially, if SWALOT is max HP, max defense, you could Iron Press, as well as like if it ever goes for Trailblaze, you could Encore it. But if you can also Encore them into Bulk Up, I think you might be potentially able to outwin the damage. If you keep spamming Acid Armor and then Body Press, you might end up winning, especially if you catch them into a Bulk Up loop. So that could be pretty strong for you here. But ultimately, Ting-Lu I don't think is bad either, because you ultimately do end up living a close combat. And let me delete that comment. Turn 5. You whirlwind here, and I know like we had like a short conversation about Swadloons whirlwinding here, but I actually think this was the right play. So the main reason why I think this is the right play, because if Tauros decided to bulk up again, it's like actually just like over. SWALOT takes 2 or gets 2 KO'd, I believe, at that point with 2 bulk ups, and then with this speed, it just outspeeds everything. So I think actually Whirlwind was the play, because if you EQ here, Tauros lives. It only does max half, and then the following turn, like, it just kills everything. I guess it doesn't win the game because SWALOT just goes for body press, but at least Tauros gets like a good 50% chunk on SWALOT, which is very, very scary. So I actually don't think Whirlwind was that bad of a move. I also think here going for the Stealth Box was also really powerful, because the Namorous did end up going for Calm Mind. Yeah, so turn 7 we sack the Ting-Lu, that's okay. Coming into Goldingo, and Namorous going for Tera Steel, obviously to not be weak to the Steel type moves. I did have a comment here of the Goldingo set was really cool to have red card, because obviously they hit you with an Earth Power and you lived, and it switched them out. Very cool. I thought it was a good way of getting moving a Namorous out of the way. However, I do think it's actually a lot sketchier than you think, because if I'm the Namorous T, I think the Sonoran Pikachus were scared of getting tricked and being tricked in the Scarf or something. But if they called that bluff, if Sonoran Pikachus called the bluff and actually Calm Minded again and just spammed Calm Mind, they also just win this game between Dream Kiss and Earth Power. Because if Earth Power one-shots Goldingo, then the red card actually never gets activated. So this is also like a bit sketchy, but also it did work out in your favor, because it is appropriate for Sonoran Pikachus to be afraid of Trick. So I think even switching out here could have been a smart play, but I also just like going for Earth Power here, because you're guaranteed not to die, and if they trick you into Scarf or Specs, Earth Power is not bad for these 3. It's okay if you're Meowscarada, but ultimately you are Steel type, so it's good resist to Grass. Sableye coming out. At this point, for the Pikachu side of things, I was honestly thinking instead of sacking Sableye here, you potentially go Samurai and Sui depending on the damage. I mean, sorry, there is a T-Spec here, so you will get like a lot of damage off with Hex, but then the following turn, you can either go for Sucker Punch if you have it, or you can spam Ceaseless Judge if Hex is not a 2-hit KO. And I think adding Ceaseless Judge, putting up a layer of spikes can put a little bit more pressure on the few members that they have on their team. So yeah, let me cut off some more of these notes. Make sure I'm keeping track with everything. Hex doing a lot of damage to Sableye. We love to see it. Turn 9, this is good to go for a Volt Switch here, because it's still, I'm pretty sure it kills Goldingo at that point. Tauros comes back in. I also think, what was I thinking here? Ooh. Almost burped into the mic there. No. This was all fine. I think Tauros is fine. I was interested to see what the Chople was for. Flower Trick here is fine. There's no like better move to go for here. Yeah. Wonder if Chople allowed it to live 1 from full. Pretty interested by that, but next Tatsugiri comes out. Actually ends up living in a close combat. I don't think that was a roll. I think it definitely could live 1. But yeah, very shocked by that. And the Rapid Spin actually was absolutely huge. I think for the Sonoran Pikachus, when you go Electro Hisui here, you have to be careful, because I assume this is like where speed creeping could go wrong. So Electro Hisui is extremely fast, so you don't always have to put your EVs in speed. But if Tatsugiri is fast and it does have Rapid Spin, once it gets +1 speed, it can outspeed your Electrode, which is what happened here. So I put down in my notes when speed creeping goes wrong, rip. But also for the Sonoran Pikachus, effectively Enamorous could have been an amazing switch in here, because you can honestly Calm Mind and basically win the game at this point, because you know that Golden Dingo is not Trick anymore. You already used up its red card and it can't hit you with any strong moves, especially if you start setting up Calm Minds. And if you brought it in, even if Tatsugiri, like, it either has Dragon or Water type moves, you resist both at this point, and you can just start Calm Minding up and then Draining Kiss back up your health. Even if Tatsugiri wants to go for a taunt, then like they go for taunt, it's totally fine. You can just Draining Kiss and then follow up by Earth Powering the SWALOT the following turn. But if they did Encore in a Draining Kiss, you do have other sacks of like the Dunsparce or Electrode Sui to at least get off a lot of special damage, where it can sweep you and then you bring back in Enamorous and start spamming Earth Power. So yeah, this Draco Meteor, honestly, on this Electrode just like really kept the Swadloons in the game. And Electro going down. Samurai Hisui comes out. SWALOT. I think the taunt on Samurai was extremely powerful. I do think the following turn of going with the Swords Dance, I think, was a little bit greedy. I think ultimately this let Samurai, like, if you hit 2 Ceaseless Edges there, it makes Gold Dingo a little bit less valuable. Potentially you could do it with something else, but ultimately you just want like high damage on this, because you already taunted it. You know that it's not going to do, it's not going to be able to Acid Armor and Body Press you. So your main goal is just to get enough damage here to get in an Enamorous so you can spam Earth Power. And then ultimately this was an extremely good sack on Swadloon's part that definitely kept them in the game. So SWALOT had potential to Acid Armor, Body Press in the future. And then Samurai going down here is huge. Let me double check if I had anything else. Yeah, basically I wrote down that the sack was super important for SWALOT to come in. And then this is like the final turns of the game really decide the game here. So Enamorous T coming out is definitely appropriate, but I will say the biggest misplay on the Sonoran Pikachu's part. Obviously SWALOT did not show Encore, but at this point you should always spam Earth Power here because you don't need Iron Defense. They've already shown Acid Armor, Body Press. You are Steel type, so you're going to be taking a lot of damage, but you should not die to 2 because of how bulky you are. And especially since it doesn't Acid Armor up immediately. Like if Samurai took what, like 57%, you're bulky, you're way bulkier than that. And you even if this is 252 HP, 252 max PDF, you still 2-hit KO it with Earth Power. I checked this Calm Mind Iron Defense set. I don't know if your EVs are anything particular, but Earth Power does 2-hit KO at this point. So all you have to do is actually click Earth Power here and you win the game. But I will say, doing this Iron Defense, very important that Swadloons actually caught it and went for the Encore here, because this is the only winning play that like wins them the game here. Because catching that Encore allows them to Acid Armor up again. And that Encoring you into Iron Defense, no matter what you did there, SWALOT can 1v1 and now win the game from there. And even from here, I don't think the Protect was really needed, but Body Press kills the last 2. So ultimately, those were like the main flaws on both sides. But, and I mean this like in no disrespect to either of the players, I think this was an insanely close match, but realistically, this is gonna sound so mean. I think Sonoran Pikachus should have won this match. It was just like the slight misplays that like ended up adding up to winning, Swadloons winning, and as well as the Swadloons capitalizing on the small mistakes that Sonoran Pikachus did. But ultimately, an extremely good match. For week 2. If you were one of these players, be very proud of yourself, because this was an extremely close game and it's a very good game, even though there are like a couple misplays here and there. Just super cool to see SWALOT as well put in this much work. So that is it for this match, so let's continue on with the next match. Alright, and for the final game of week 2 for the PBO Kalos edition, we have the Las Vegas Corviknights versus the Los Angeles Pelippers. Of course, this is going to be the last game because the other 2 games were forfeits, and those teams did end up unfortunately being replaced, so we are going to have 2 new teams added to the league pretty shortly. They should be ultimately in effect for week 3. I don't know if they'll have time to get their games in, but hopefully they will. But the Las Vegas Corviknights have the team roster and the top right, and the Los Angeles Pelippers have the team roster and the bottom right. So the Las Vegas Corviknights decided to bring Low Kicks, Iron Valiant, Typhlosion Hisui, Slacking again, love me some Slacking, Arbolivia, and Iron Jugulus. While the Los Angeles Pelippers decided to bring Walking Wake, Torkoal, With the Sun, Cinderace, Grimmsnarl, Iron Hands, and Scyther, as well as make sure to check out his YouTube channel in the description below. He has a team builder and his own perspective of this battle live, which is extremely interesting. I highly make sure that you check it out, as well as his future content. Very entertaining. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into the battle. So we'll watch it here. Leads off with Torkoal. Slacking comes out. Torkoal going for Stealth Rocks, while Slacking goes for Earthquake. Earthquake doing a lot of damage, but of course Slacking does have Truant, so the following turn it is going to be loafing around. Grimmsnarl does come out, wants to go for a Reflect here. Arbolivia coming out here. Both screens get set up while Arbolivia has Leech Seed, and Grimmsnarl actually shows Parting Shot, which is actually so huge because I think Parting Shot is so underrated, especially for Grimmsnarl. Scyther coming in on the Hyper Voice, literally taking no damage because it is Eviolite. You can also check out his sets on his team builder as well. Swords Dance up, so now it's looking pretty scary here. Slacking does come out to take the Pounce, which is a really cool tech because it does drop their speed and is only 5 base power lower than Scizor. Grimmsnarl does come out on to Slacking's Yawn, obviously fearing a Sucker Punch there. Arbolivia coming out as Grimmsnarl Parting Shots. Very good prediction there. Cinderace coming out, wants to go for a U-turn as Arbolivia protects. And as we can see, the following turn, it does get off that U-turn and it does a lot of damage, taking out that Arbolivia. Now we can see Grimmsnarl wanting to come back out. Low Kick's coming in now. It's going to be doing some huge damage with Tera Bug, First Impression, or U-turn. Does decide to bring in Torkoal to set up the Sun, and then Low Kicks is able to pick up that kill, and then Typhlosion Hisui comes out. But of course, Walking Wake is the beast that is coming out in the Sun to spam some Hydro Steams here. Does end up sacking the Slacking. Low Kick's coming out, but it is taking a lot of damage from Stealth Rocks as well as Life Orb. Does decide to sack the Cinderace. That First Impression does huge damage because it is Tinted Lens. Following that, Walking Wake comes back, ultimately like winning the sack war as it's able to spam Hydro Steam for everything. As you can see, we can Frisk and see that Walking Wake is Choice Scarfed. Iron Valiant here, trying to catch some type of switch out for Walking Wake, but since it is Choice Scarf, it definitely does kill with the Hydro Steam and the Stun. So Iron Jugulus, there was a double there into Iron Jugulus, but it does end up being sacked. Low Kick's coming out to get off its final hit before it dies to Life Orb. Iron Hands ultimately does take that. And then finally is Iron Valiant in the back. Iron Valiant actually is able to pick up one more kill with Spirit Break. And then following that, we see Grimmsnarl come out to set up the light screen, does die to a Spirit Break, and then Scyther coming out, making its debut, going for a Pounce, actually lives the Spirit Break because it is Eviolite, and then the following turn it decides to go for a Tera Flying Aerial Ace to take out the kill. So huge GG's to both of these players. Of course, it was decently close, but I think with Stealth Rocks effectively doing tons of damage to Low Kicks, and Typhlosion Hisui whittling everything down, as well as Choice Scarf after Arbolivia dying, having no switch-ins to Hydro Steam was really powerful for Walking Wake. So GG's to both of these guys, and let's go ahead and get into the review of the match. So I have notes. I want to say I have notes for both perspectives, so let's actually do a thing here where we talk. I'll try to hit both I'll try to hit. Normally I would be like, let's run through the battle with this side and then let's run through the battle with this side, which is what I did for when I took my notes, but obviously it's hard to like pick up on both sides starting off. I think the Torkoal here is absolutely huge because, as you can see, your opponent does not have Stealth Rock. I also saw in your team builder that you were gonna run some other move I forgot instead of Stealth Rocks, but I think it really worked out for you because instead of whatever move that you were gonna run, your opponent effectively didn't bring Stealth Rocks, and this gave you an opportunity to set up Stealth Rocks, which was really powerful for low kicks, taking 25% every time it came in, especially with Life Orb chip. It essentially reduced the amount of turns that it could come in and go for first impression, which is ultimately like super strong. So I definitely think like immediately off the rip going for Stealth Rock here is super huge. I also think for the Las Vegas Corviknights side, if you are going to run a team that isn't running heavy duty boots and is also very like not like you're running no spinner, you need to be playing a lot more offensively. So for here, ideally you want to immediately put on the pressure, and I think ultimately low kicks coming in off the rip to Tera bug either first impression something or U-turn out, because it is faster than a lot of things. It can U-turn out on stuff and do a lot of damage, and then effectively you got low kicks in on a turn where it didn't take Stealth Rock damage. So like this first turn you could have gone low kicks, Tera bugged, U-turn, and then gone into like Typhlosion Hisui, or I really think Iron Jugulus could have came out and done a lot of damage as well. Moving forward, I think the next thing I have is turn 3 here. For the Las Vegas Corviknights, ultimately you did stay in a turn for the Truant. So on this turn, when you have slacking out and like you already spent the turn like loafing around, Grimmsnarl can't one-shot you. It is very better, very better. It is better for you to always Giga Impact here to get off your hit while you still can, because, or even if it's Earthquake, because ultimately you stayed out for the Truant turn. Like maybe you were afraid of like catching some damage as you switched out, but ultimately like if you're willing to stay in here, like the other turn you just let your opponent get free switch initiative, and then again like they're gonna get more free switch initiative here if they just set up screens and you have to switch out. But like I think you get Giga Impacting here or Earthquaking one time to weaken the Grimmsnarl is very effective, as this does allow you to, like, Grimmsnarl really doesn't do that much damage. Most of the times it's a screen setter, but it can bulk up, so it can be scary sometimes, but most of the time it's running screens. So ultimately slacking can get off a lot of damage here, and if you know that it's going for screens, then the following turn you can switch into something and it's going to screen again, and you effectively get off all that damage as well as a free switch in on the Grimmsnarl, which is really powerful. So I think beyond that, sorry, let me delete some of these things, as well as Giga Impact. I was going to say Giga Impact has no resist on the Los Angeles Pelippers teams, so it would do a lot of damage. Let me delete some of these notes. Sorry about that. Reflect here, Light Screen here, I think are both valid. Parting Shot out is just amazing. Really love Parting Shot. Allows you to get in Scyther. And then turn 5 here, I said going for the sweep is valid here of trying to Trailblaze into Swords Dance, but also you can also see that your opponent has no switch-ins for Tera Flying Air Release, and it absolutely destroys Arbolivia, like no questions asked. So if your opponent did decide to bring in anything else thinking that they could take this hit, they absolutely cannot. But I do understand the aspect of setting up for Trailblaze into Swords Dance, because it can also do a lot of damage. And I think I wrote in here, yeah, I wrote Tera Flying has no switch-in, so you could have just spammed Aerial Ace here, even on turn 7 when they make the switch. Instead of pouncing, you can also just Aerial Ace too. But I understand that you did want to reduce the speed of what was coming in, but also since you already have triples, you're up +1 speed, you ultimately want to do as much damage as possible, so you definitely want to go for Tera Flying Aerial Ace. Like, even if these things are scarfed, let's see, so you're up to 339 speed, your max speed, you don't outspeed like Scarf Jugulus, as well as you don't outspeed Scarf Valiant, but those things are a little bit unique, as well as they most likely cannot take an aerial ace, or at least picking up a kill before they come out to try and do damage to you. I think honestly slacking was a sack here, but I think you being worried about Sucker Punch is also very valid because it could have that. You do switch out, slacking does go for a yawn. This also could show you for Scyther in the future that it probably doesn't have Sucker Punch, because I think with Reflect Up, you can live a first impression from low kicks, especially if you're Eviolite, but don't quote me on that, because it is extremely strong. Delete some of these notes, delete some of these notes, sorry. I know it's kind of stupid. Also, this turn of going in slacking for the Las Vegas Corviknights is effectively, this thing is really not a great sack. So the reason why I'm saying that is this is also like one of the only mons that can take hits from Scyther, and like honestly with Stealth Rock up, Iron Juggler is taking 25%. I'm pretty sure Scyther just sweeps here. So you don't have Sucker Punch, but if your opponent was not thinking about Sucker Punch, I'm pretty sure they just they sweep your team here, as long as they don't die to a Reflect first impression with the Eviolite, and they 4 times resist, but with Tinted Lens they just 2 times resist, but I think they live 1. As well as the lead seed doesn't matter as long as whatever they is in front of them is killing them at the end of the turn, at the end of each turn. So none of these guys can take a Tera Flying. But Slacking is the one Pokemon that can actually take a Tera Flying Aerial Ace from full. So I don't think that this was an appropriate sack. I think more likely Typhlosion Hisui was a better sack, and then you bring in Slacking to threaten doing damage. So yeah. Let's see. This is fine. I think we're about to go in turn 10. Delete some of this stuff. Yeah, all this is fine. No major misplays. Again, sacking Arbolivia here I don't think was a great play. I think it's always best to sack Typhlosion Hisui, because with Arbolivia gone, you don't have a safe Hydro Steam switch in, which it does end up spamming at the end, which is really powerful. So I think that there are better sacking options for the Las Vegas Corviknights. Grimmsnarl does come out. I do like low kicks coming in because it can put in a lot of pressure. So let me delete that one as well. And then I mean, this sack of Torkoal is really not that bad because you do get all the sun turns that you need for Walking Wake to come in. Typhlosion Hisui comes in, and then this is definitely where I will shout out Los Angeles Pelippers for appropriately realizing that now that Arbolivia is gone, they can just spam Hydro Steam, and they play the Walking Wake extremely well, because ultimately at this point, if it's just simply sack for sack, Los Angeles Pelippers will always win this game. So because Walking Wake comes in Hydro Steams, Low Kicks comes out and wants the first impression, like even if it wasn't taking like a bajillion damage from Stealth Rocks and Life Orb chip, you would just win this war of like trading back and forth. The sun would eventually go away, so you might be worried about Scarf Valiant, but we can see later that it ends up being booster energy. Turn 18. Okay, so the next thing I have is turn 17. Sacking the Cinderace is totally fine here as well. You could have gone Iron Hands, but I think honestly sacking the Cinderace is fine. These other things are pretty valuable. 16, getting off that Hydro Steam, this is fine. On turn 17, bringing Iron Valiant here is a misplay on the Las Vegas Corviknights side, simply because we've already seen that first getting the Choice Scarf and it having photosynthesis speed up means that Iron Valiant does not get outsped. And checking the calcs and the Sun, Hydro Steam is a guaranteed kill. So I think in terms of the Las Vegas Corviknights, you always go low kicks here, even just for one more kill. It still puts you in a closer game in terms of differential versus going in Iron Valiant, and unfortunately this just ends up being a sack because in the Sun, Walking Wake does outspeed. Hydro Steam does good damage, just takes out the Jugulus in one hit. Walking Wake is a monster. Here comes low kicks, but ultimately it is dying to one more turn of recoil damage, going for a first impression. Yeah, ultimately the following turn, I think this double into Jugulus, I think they forgot, Las Vegas Corviknight probably forgot that they were Choice Scarf from frisking it. And that's totally okay, like that makes sense. Everyone makes mistakes, so it does make sense saying that accidentally doubling into the Jugulus there. I will say, I think on the Los Angeles Pelippers, it didn't really end up mattering. But I think here, when low kicks goes for first impression, your best play is to sack Scyther. Well, it doesn't really matter who you sack, because ultimately you knew that the following turn, Walking Wake can just one shot with Hydro Steam at the end of the game. So it doesn't really matter who you sack as long as you bring in Walking Wake. But the way that you ended up playing out this game was going Grimmsnarl and then Scyther. Ultimately, Scyther is the better sack here, because if what you said in your team builder of Calx was right, Iron Hands is able to live any hit from Iron Valiant from full, versus like right here it just ends up dying, and then you could heavy slam and just win the game that way. But ultimately, even here, like you bring in Grimmsnarl, but as previously you talked in your video, you can always go Walking Wake and go for Hydro Steam. I know it is a bit scary, as well as like I thought this thing was Choice Scarf the entire time, but it was booster energy. You just have to, like, I completely missed that it was booster energy. Even when I was watching this game review, I was like, wait, they're not scarfed, because like Scyther ended up like outspeeding, which is like absolutely insane to me. But anyway, the Grimmsnarl goes for Light Screen. I think I already said this before. Reflect might be better here because Spear Break is being spammed, so it might be physical. Scyther actually ends up living a Spear Break. Also, like for some reason it's just faster, which is crazy. But Terraflying Airlace is always better here, I believe. But they could have Thunderbolt, but through Light Screen, maybe Light Screen is better just in case they have Thunderbolt. I think Terraflying Airlace is always better here because it kills, but I understand like potentially you were worried that it might still be Scarf for Walking Wake in the back, but it did show booster energy before, so it's totally fine. But then the following turn you do pick up the kill, so it's like, it's just kind of like ultimately it didn't matter, but I guess it could have been like cleaner, but like don't feel upset about that. GG's to both players for this game. It was a really good match because Walking Wake had no switch-ins, and then Locate's just tearing down resists, even Torkoal taking like huge damage from first impression / U-turn. Very cool indeed. And I think that's gonna be it for me. Yeah, I will be tuning in for week 3, trying my best to write down notes, as well as like trying to make this a little bit more fluid. Maybe I'll just go like turn by turn, which perspective I'm talking about, instead of doing like this POV, like what happened, blah blah. But yeah, sometimes I feel bad because like it's like I'm just trying to be critical to help people, but also like I hate feeling like nitpicky in terms of like people going for moves. Like, you know, someone still ends up winning, but it's not like, you know, maybe they sacked like extra mons and they could have just like outright went out and like won the game. But yeah, ultimately I think sometimes it's like okay to be nitpicky, but of course take all this criticism with a positive attitude, hopefully. hopefully, please take this criticism with a positive attitude. It is only meant to be helpful, as well as like pat yourself on the back for getting through another week of the PBO. To whoever is watching this video, and now I'm just rambling. I'm gonna get the heck out of here. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.